Welcome back to the Inspiring Workplaces Summer Series 2024 in partnership with H&H. I'm Christine Jarvis from H&H, and it's a real joy to be involved in such a fantastic event. We've been here every day this week at the same time for daily inspiring keynotes to transform your organisation. Today is our final session of this year's series, but don't worry if you haven't been able to make every session live, as all the talks are made available on demand on the Inspiring Workplaces website. Please do join the conversation. Add your comments, questions for the speakers in the comments section below. So on to our first speakers of the day. I am thrilled to introduce Kay Vessey, who's Head of Talent and Learning at H&H, and Jayne Wilcock, Learning Skills Workforce Development Group Manager at East Riding of Yorkshire Council. Today, they're going to be talking to us about how a transformational 12-month leadership programme is helping the region's largest employer become more agile, more diverse, and more inclusive. And it all comes down, as so many of these things do, to authentic, effective communication. Welcome, Kay and Jayne.
Thanks, Christine.
Hi, Christine. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today, and I'm delighted to be joined by Jayne, and we're going to be talking to you and sharing everything that we have worked together on and collaborated on. And as Christine said, this is all about a piece of work that we did together. We co-collaborated and we co-created and we delivered this programme called Leadership in the Spotlight for East Riding Yorkshire Council. So to give you a little bit of context about Yorkshire Council, it's one of the largest local councils in the UK, and geographically it's part of Yorkshire. It covers a big chunk of the east coast of Northern England. It's just above the Humber Bridge, for those of you that know the Humber Bridge, and right up to the Yorkshire Wolds. And like its landscape, there's a lot of variety, and it's also one of the area's biggest employers. So to co-collaborate and work together with Jayne on delivering this programme has been a real pleasure and a real joy, because there's 10,000 employees across this local authority. So today we're delighted to share our story with you, and we're going to do that together. So my first question to Jayne really is, what were the challenges that you faced as a local authority that stimulated this programme?
Thanks, Kay. Yeah, and as you say, Kay, it was a real collaborative, co-produced programme. And I think, we had an initial concept based on those challenges we were facing, which, together we were able to bring to life within the training. But I think as a local authority, and the scale of our local authority, as you say, 10,000 employees, we had a real strategic ambition to become more agile, more diverse, and more inclusive as an organisation. And we wanted to recognise that people were achieving well, I guess, within their own service areas. But as a local authority, you can imagine we've got multiple service areas covering an immense amount of services that we deliver as a local authority. And so whilst that communication within teams was pretty good already, that communication across teams and across directorates, we felt we needed to work a little bit more on. So we wanted to work with our senior leaders to really sort of supercharge that communication right the way across the organisation, so that we had that one single voice in relation to what our aims and ambitions were. But I guess the challenge for us, having had that vision, was how we did that in a world where, it was a bit of a change in culture for us. Everybody was busy. Everybody was facing their own challenges. As a local authority, we had all of the wicked problems and the day-to-day problems that we have, dealing with multiple pressures. And so it was a case of, how do we inspire and motivate our leaders to become better connected, and, to really set that example of top-class communication in a way that was effective and we could fit into the timescale that we had and people's schedules.
So what did you do to create that environment, Jayne? How did you respond to that need as a local authority with, a big area with lots of employees and actually a lot of leaders across the organisation?
Yeah, I think what we recognised was that whatever we did needed to start right from the very top. And we were really lucky that our chief executive, our executive directors, wanted to be part of and join in this program. And arguably, their communication across the strands that they were responsible for set the scene really for everybody else working more collaboratively together. And as we say, supercharging that communication across directorates. So the group that we started with consisted of our chief exec, our exec directors, our heads of services, and our group managers who were managing sort of the different functions across the council. As you said at the beginning, it was a 12-month programme, but it was really based around experiential learning. And it really was designed to give those leaders, it was almost a chance to be prompted to learn yourself, if that makes sense, to come up with your own solutions, but in a really safe space where you could share that with other people and interact across teams. And I think what Leadership in the Spotlight did really well to create that environment was it focused leaders on themselves first. So it asked leaders to consider their own motivators, their own behaviours, their own capabilities, and their own focus, and then sort of challenged them to reach out and to share that with others. And I think essentially, we started to think about actually, rather than thinking about communicating in the sense of how we like to communicate, we need to start thinking about communicating by understanding how those that we communicate to like to be communicated with. And sometimes that might mean changing our own personal styles. And it was creating that environment where it was a really safe space to do that.
So that sounds like a big undertaking, Jayne, really, that you wanted to actually achieve. So what was your starting point to actually developing the program? Where did you begin?
Yeah, where did we begin? I think with a bit of head scratching, probably to start with. But then sort of thinking about what it was that we wanted to achieve. And, coming from an education background, I'm a big believer in starting at the end and then working back. So we started with the vision of what success would look like if we did this well, and the things that we wanted to change as part of that culture shift and as part of that improved communication. So as you can see on the screen, we spoke about moving from adult-child relationships to adult-to-adult relationships. And we spoke about leaders making that shift from communication that was aimed at helping others to succeed in a way that they wanted help, as opposed to let me direct you how to do something. That focus would change from let me direct you to actually, what do you want from me to help you succeed? And part of that was changing our trust culture. So, moving away from a trust when, I'll trust you when I've seen that you can do X, Y, or Z, to, do you know what, actually, I'll trust you until you prove otherwise in that regard. So I think some of that, embracing as well that diversity of the way that different people would tackle different problems and do different things, and removing some of those boundaries around not giving direction on the how, but giving direction on the what. So this is what I needed to achieve. How you get there, you can bring your own personality, your own diversity, and your own style to that to a certain extent. So sort of managing, the what, not the how, was really important to us. And I think one of the biggest things, especially for leaders, was that understanding that actually as a leader, it's okay to be vulnerable. And actually as a leader, it's actually okay to not always have all of the answers. And the important thing is that we don't always have the answers, but we absolutely should always know the questions we have to ask to get the answers and to get the best out of the people that we're leading. So, they were some of the really key principles of what we tried to achieve. To visualize that, I guess that's where we came up with our from what to what, so what. What do we want to go from? What do we want to go to? And so what? What difference is this going to make if we actually do achieve this?
Fantastic, thank you. So it was really interesting working with Jayne and having this background and having this analysis for us, which enabled us to, really start to think about, so what at a very high level do you want to achieve as an organization, and what are the outcomes that you desire? There's an awful lot within that. So these are the things that we actually identified, was around the fact of enhanced communication, coaching and feedback skills, increased ability to motivate, inspire and engage others, improved flexibility to adapt and support teams to navigate through change, and increased self-confidence in leadership style and approach. And of course, all of that is absolutely underpinned by that supercharging up of their communication. So off the back of this, thinking about shaping the program and that co-collaboration and, and designing it together, this was how we shaped the program. And it was really important to think about, how do we do that? What do our learners need? And, these are leaders. And actually, for many of them, they'd gone through a number of different, development programs previously. So how was we going to make this different? And how was we going to support them to be the leaders for today and for the future? So we did this in a couple of ways. It was a blended learning program. We designed it to meet the needs of the outcomes and each person as individuals. So we had physical workshops where we brought people together. And as a result of that, we created a learning community. They learned from one another. We created that safe environment, that safe psychological space for them to explore and share and build those relationships up as leaders across the authority. We had virtual classrooms. It was punctuated with virtual classrooms along the 12 months, which was all about, reflective thinking, sharing their experiences, learning from one another, being able to actually think about action planning and moving it forward. What had they achieved? What had been some of their challenges? And we also created some interactive learning resources for each of the learners to use along the way. So, they could dip in and out of podcasts, articles, things for them to read, watch, learn, experience, and also build up their own library of learning. So we encouraged them to share, things that they'd found along the way. So actually it was building up that resource bank to continue to learn and cascade. So that was one of the other things for us, was about, it wasn't just for the leaders as part of this program. They could then take this back and cascade and share their learning, with their teams as well. So I suppose one of the questions, Jane, is around the fact, we created this program. We've talked about the starting point, but what was the cornerstone for you? What was that foundational block that, cemented this within East Riding?
I think from day one, we always wanted this to be a really authentic program, to bring out that really authentic leadership that, we wanted to see across the organisation. And to really celebrate the fact that, across the local authority, we've got so many strengths and talents that we bring to the organisation across our own departments and our own teams. And it was, really important that we recognised that both in the room, as it were, or the virtual room, in terms of the people that were participating in this programme, but within our own teams as well, that we were then going back and managing and leading on a day-to-day basis, that, we had that diversity too. And so I guess what we wanted to do was to unlock people's drivers, try and find out what motivates people, what motivates us to do what we do every day, and, to keep making that difference, to residents and to our local communities that we're serving, to inspire leaders and to create environments in which they felt really confident and comfortable to take that new thinking. And I think I'll say new thinking as opposed to new learning. There was new learning, but there was also new ways of thinking that was really important, and to take that new thinking back to their teams and start to trickle that through their teams, and to act and behave and communicate, in different ways. And I think what was really nice about the programme is there was a really nice shift between us thinking about this very individually in terms of what does this mean for me as a leader and how can I apply this in my team, but then being in a room amongst other leaders that were thinking the same thing, and then having the opportunity to talk to each other, to share, to transfer our knowledge, to check what we were thinking, to ask others, what do you think to this? What do you, what's your perception of what I'm thinking that I might go away and try? in my team, and to get those insights from people that potentially we wouldn't have spoken to, previously and before this program. So we all had our own targets, our own SMART targets, that we wanted to achieve, so that we could measure our individual so what's in terms of, the difference it made to our teams. But we really wanted to, make sure that when we went back to our teams, we could measure that success. And I think one thing that this program did really successfully in allowing us to do that was through that experiential learning. It really managed to bridge that academic practitioner divide, because we were learning some theories, we were learning some academic practice, but then we was having a real, fantastic ability in a really safe space to test that out on each other as leaders, and then go back and test it in our teams. So that bridging of that academic to practitioner divide was one of the critical elements of the program, I think.
Brilliant. So we talked about supercharging communication, didn't we, earlier on? So I am intrigued around how did this program dial up and enhance communication? When you're talking about leaders, they're already great communicators. So sometimes it is just that extra 1%, isn't it? So how did it enhance it for your teams?
I think, as I say, what we always wanted to do was to recognise how good we already were. We did, as you say, already have leaders that were very good at communicating, but recognising that within individual teams, whilst it was strong, potentially it didn't cross over the boundaries of service to service, team to team, as well as maybe it could. And so through that process, and I guess anybody who works in a big organisation will know that when you're not communicating across teams, it brings challenges of sometimes duplication of effort, sometimes a lack of clarity when different teams are talking in a slightly different voice, reinventing the wheel sometimes, which, getting slightly different perspectives on things. And I think, one of the things that's very clear, having worked in local government for an awful lot of years, is actually there's rare that we get new problems to fix. Usually problems are recycled problems that are just coming back around again in a different way, shape or form. And so actually, if we talked across directorates and across teams more, we may get different perspectives that could really add value to that conversation and could reduce that duplication. That could really strengthen that one organisation, one voice, one vision, one aim, and we were all talking the same language.
Thanks, Jane. So you did say to me earlier on, didn't you, about technology and about the fact that, moving from being in a fixed office, being in a fixed building, and actually the impact of having technology, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, all of that technological advancement that happened quite quickly made such a difference to you as an organisation.
It did. And I think, Spotlight in that came at a really great time, because it came at a time where we were changing the way we communicated technically across the organisation as well. So, we were seeing the arrival of Teams, of chats, making communication so much more accessible. And I think, gone were the days where you'd sit in an office and you'd have to physically arrange a meeting and go and talk to somebody if you wanted their insights. And now what you could do is you could just send them a Teams chat and say, have you got 5 minutes? Can I ask you a question? Do you mind just giving me your thoughts on this? And vice versa, people would come to you and say, have you just got 5 minutes? And those relationships developed from the learning environment, what we did down at your offices at H&H, from that space back into the real world, where it became really easy just to message somebody else that you'd been on the day with and say, give me your thoughts. Can you share this with me? And I think it was a happy coincidence, because we didn't plan that the technology and leadership in the Spotlight would align exactly as it did. So in that respect, that was, a happy coincidence. However, as it transpired, I think technology made it possible to remove those geographical boundaries and to make it so much easier for us to talk with each other really quickly. And I think, one of the things that's very clear, having worked in local government for an awful lot of years, we didn't plan that the technology and leadership in the Spotlight would align exactly as it did. So in that respect, that was, a happy coincidence. However, as it transpired, I think technology made it possible to remove those geographical boundaries and to make it so much easier for us to talk with each other really quickly. so technology made that possible, but the learning and the relationships that we built through this program gave us the confidence to really sort of maximize the impact of that new technology. So that really gave us sort of the impetus to say, actually it's technically possible, and we've got the confidence to do it now as well, because it's okay that we can ask those questions and we can seek advice from each other.
Thank you. So, one of the things for this program, and it is something very dear to Jayne's heart, is around measurement. And it's, you've already heard her talk about, how do we measure, how do we challenge, how do we celebrate, how do we look at what we now need to do, what, starting at the end and working backwards. So measurement was one of the biggest things that we kind of punctuated throughout the program. And I know that, worked in learning and development for many, many, many years, and sometimes it can be a real challenge to think about, how do we measure, what's some of the immediate impact and what's some of the impact that takes time to actually trickle through. So we did this in a number of different ways. We used both qualitative and quantitative analysis throughout the program, right from the very beginning, starting with a benchmark, starting with people actually setting out their SMART objectives, thinking about their desired outcomes. And all along the way, we gathered feedback, we asked them questions, we kind of measured it to within an inch of its life, really. But it was really great, because I think sometimes it helps the learners to actually establish and celebrate all the things that they've achieved along the way that they might not have actually recognized. So here's a couple of stats here that, we pulled from some of the feedback that we got. We asked them some statements, and we asked them to measure, how the impact that the actual program had had. And this was actually at the end of the program. So you can see from here that we had some really, really great results. And, as a result of that enabled the learners to really think about what they'd achieved as an individual and also as a collective. There was a few kind of remarks that was also made that I think I've shared with you today, because I think that some of these are really lovely. I'm not going to read them out, but I just think some of those key words about, being pushed out of your comfort zone, about being empowered, about having an opportunity. And, I think from Jayne's perspective, it just kind of goes to show, her initial vision of delivering a transformational program. The feedback that we'd got back from all of the learners, was really incredible. And this is another one. So, talking about the fact that it's been powerful. And I know that a lot of people had spent a lot of time doing different types of programs through the years, because East Riding is one of those organisations who has very, very long-standing service people. So, they've experienced through a number of different decades, leadership, different environments, different ways of working. So to have some of this feedback was really incredible, for all of us. So I suppose my final question, Jayne, is out of all of that, what are you most proud of, having, worked through the program, co-collaborated and designed the program and delivered it?
It was incredibly proud to see it, come to life from that initial concept to, seeing some of those quotes, and it never ceases. I've read those quotes several times, but every time I read them, I still smile. And, one of the things that I said earlier was it was about authentic leadership. And, 96% of the cohort said that they felt that they were authentic leaders at the end of this program. And that was really lovely. I think some of the really nice things was we didn't, when I said right at the beginning, everybody from chief executive down to that sort of group manager level all attended these programs. And we didn't do that in tiers. We did that just in cohort groups, and we were mixed. We had directors, group managers, various levels of leaders all in the same groups at the same time. And so it was really lovely, actually. And it made me feel really proud that everybody engaged with that. We left hierarchy at the door when we got to H&H offices, and we came into that, learning environment, and we shared stories, and we shared inspirations, and we shared motivations, and we communicated as equals, and we learned from each other. And that was just as important as what we learned from the program. And so that was really really a proud moment for me. I think we've gone on from this, leadership in the spotlight was for those senior leaders. We've used that really in a way that we've embedded it across other leadership learning opportunities that we do. So we, those things that we have as our from what to what so what didn't just sit in leadership in the spotlight. They are also the cornerstones of every leadership piece of training we do. So we're working to that same ethos of those same messages throughout everything, and it's embedded through. And I think that's really nice. And because of that, people are still talking about it, and that's really makes me proud, that people still talk about what they learned, what they did, what they shared, new networks that they've gained through leadership in the spotlight. And talking about how leadership in the spotlight has helped them to achieve things in their teams that they might not have otherwise done. And so, again, that's just great. And then I'm really excited to say that we're kicking off a new cohort in October to recognise our new leaders and new managers that have come into the organisation since we last delivered. And of course, you just put the slide up there. We were absolutely delighted to get an award of merit at the Learning Excellence Awards, which was phenomenal. And I believe as well, Kay, we've just been shortlisted with the Institute of International Communications for Best Leadership Communication Programme as well. So
yeah, we have.
Very excited about that too. So yeah, it continues to make me really proud, and I think it'll be a programme that as an organisation we remember for a long time.
Fantastic. So you was in a very unique position of commissioning the programme and being a delegate. Is there any key takeaways that you want to share with everyone that's kind of tuned in around your experience and those two different angles?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess at first I couldn't decide whether I was being brave or daft putting myself in that position, because it was quite scary. It was quite scary to be a delegate on a programme that you developed and co-created. But it was a privilege at the same time. And I guess, coming into the post that I did, doing nothing wasn't an option in the role I had. The organisation, wanted a leadership programme such as this. We needed to make that transition to more agile ways of working. So I did have to jump in with both feet and do it. And it was almost that, embrace the fear and just do it anyway. For me, I think as a delegate on the programme, part of it for me was just that. It was quite a scary position to put myself in as a leader. But actually, I had to use sort of my motivators and sort of my sort of intrinsic motivation, I guess, to think to myself, do you know what, succeed or fail, I'll learn from this. And I can use that in my leadership development as I go through. So I think as the programme then built momentum, it inspired me to be brave. It inspired me to have some of those difficult conversations. Seeing the programme come to life and seeing how people engaged in it, I think that was really useful for me, because I felt as if I grew in that ability to trust my own instincts, to trust my own judgments. And then even, since then, that, as I say, that networking that's continued to happen, where we can ask other people questions, other people come to us and talk to us, and we share across teams much more successfully, much more collaboratively now than what we ever did. And I think, the biggest takeaway for me was just reminding myself that as leaders, I don't need all the answers. I just need to know the questions. And I've got really great teams around me that I can trust. And as a team, we can achieve, amazing things.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to leave it there, because I think that's the final underline. So thank you, Jayne, so much for sharing the story. And it's been an absolute privilege and an honour to work with you all. So thanks very much. And back to Christine.
Thanks, Kay.
Thank you very much, Kay and Jayne. What an eye-opener that was. It sounds like this was a really radical change of approach to get senior leaders to have to open up and study their motivations. And it's great to hear that it's something you're rolling out to other leadership training as well, of leadership development. So thanks very much, both of you. Absolutely fascinating.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for joining us today for the final day of the Summer Series 2024. You can join the Inspiring Workplaces Inspire Hub Forum. You'll find the link to join on the Inspiring Workplaces website, and keep these important conversations going. Let's keep talking and sharing and making workplaces the best they possibly can be. We've been thrilled to have you with us this summer and hope to catch you again next time. Don't forget to check out the Inspiring Workplaces website for more events coming up. But for now, it's farewell from me. Bye-bye.